Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to move forward through yet another season together. As always, you can find our 100% free, 24/7 boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars when you find us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. Alright folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter. And today we are talking about the Jaguars' very easy 25-3 win over the Tennessee Titans. I mean, the Jaguars put this thing in cruise control, pretty early on in the second half. After the Bayshore Tootin touchdown, the game was over before then. If you watched it, if you want to compare it to winning possessions, the Titans won the first possession of the game. Get a sack from Trevor Lawrence, force the Jaguars punt in midfield, drive down there, kick a field goal, which obviously prefer a touchdown, but the Titans were cramming it down the middle of the Jaguars defense on the first drive. They were legitimately getting 10 yards a pop. And then every drive pretty much after that, every possession series, the Jaguars won. Yeah, the Jaguars went 3 drives in the first half, I believe, consecutive when they went 3 and outs. They got to look at some stuff and clean up some stuff on offense. They really struggled to run the ball in this game. It felt like all game that, they were having to rely on the drop-back passing game, which, as we've talked about, their identity throughout the season and what they're best at has been running the ball and then building things off of that. Obviously, being unable to run the ball against the Titans played a factor, but I thought Trevor Lawrence had his best and cleanest game of the season. Some really impressive throws, especially downfield. It looked like they got the downfield game a little more flowing this week. And I thought that you could just see, now that guys are back healthy, now that, they have their weapons, the offense looks like the healthiest it's been, since the start of the season. It looked like, in the passing game, that there's a lot of things they can do. There's a lot of potential there. Trevor Lawrence and Jacoby Myers have been just a complete, mind melt since they got together. They've seemed like they've become one in terms of their chemistry on the field. They've been very successful, especially in the red zone. He caught his second touchdown with the Jaguars in, his 4th game with them. And he's had 2 touchdowns that should have happened as well between his touchdown against Houston that got wiped off due to Chuma Edoga's false start, and then what would have been an easy touchdown last week against Arizona that Calais Campbell tipped for an interception. But Jacoby Myers, just what he's done for Trevor Lawrence, especially, in the red zone, I think it's clear he's a guy you have to extend. You just have to figure out how to make it work. Paying a guy who, when you have 2 first-round picks at receiver, interesting move, but you have at least 2 more years after this year of Brian Thomas on a rookie deal. You have at least 3 years of Travis Hunter on a cheap rookie deal. That doesn't even include the 5th-year options for both. The Jaguars can afford to pay somebody at receiver. And I think each and every week, Jacoby Myers shows us more and more why it should be him. He's fitting the offense very well. I thought Brian Thomas Jr., you listen to Liam Cohen speak after the game, and, he talked about continuing to get him going, especially as he gets healthier. It felt like, a game where they didn't really, a game where they didn't have to lean on him. But it never seemed like it was going to be a game they were going to pepper him, he was going to get 12, 13 targets or anything like that. It definitely, I think, you could see, though, how he opens up things for them. And how important he is just in terms of getting the ball in his hands. He created twice. Important yards after the catch. And I think, his block on that early Jacoby Myers catch, go watch that and tell me it's not a guy who's playing his ass off, frankly. I'm a big Brian Thomas fan. I know I'm not excusing and I'm not making excuses, whatever. He's had a rough season so far. And his production has been nowhere near where anybody, I think, expected, especially myself. But I do think the flack on him has gone a bit overboard. He's still the guy who broke all those records last year. He's still that guy. Immensely talented. Somebody who I think has done a good job of fighting through the adversity of the season. And you can see the offense when it's at full strength between him and Myers and Brendan Strange and Parker Washington has a lot of potential. Now, obviously, Parker Washington gets hurt in this game with a hip injury, ended up leaving the game. Happened on a punt return, kind of a non-contact, hip injury. So we'll obviously see what that means for Washington this week. A big part of when it comes to injuries is unless you have source reporting, I don't speculate, so I'm not going to. But if there is anything that causes Parker Washington to miss any time, I do think that's a big hit. He's been very impactful. Like I said, just him with those three other guys, that's 4+ guys in the passing game. You can do a lot of damage with that. And he's been one of the best returners in the NFL, obviously. Walker Little also left with a concussion. It'll be interesting to see where they will be with that. I know what most people's reactions are. Walker Little gave up another sack on Sunday. Has certainly had some rough moments this year, but Patrick McCarry missed the game. Chuma Edoga missed the game. It's just not a scenario where it's okay or ideal for your third offensive lineman to get injured. And if he is, what they did on Sunday was Cole Van Lanen went to left tackle, and Wyatt Milan went to right guard and got his first significant snaps of the season. Cole Van Lanen has now, if he plays left tackle next week against the Colts, he will have played left guard against Houston, right tackle against the Chargers and Cardinals, right guard against the Titans, and then left tackle next week against the Colts. Every position but center in a 5-week span. That's absolutely bonkers, people. Lastly, last two things, I thought the special teams, played really well. Devon Hamilton deserves a lot of recognition for his job going in at long snapper when Ross Matisic got injured. I mean, they even had one snap where they were backed up into their own end zone on a punt. Hats off to him. I mean, it says a lot about him, who he is as a professional, which, I can attest to. He's one of the most respected guys in that building. Easily. Just a tough, goes about his business guy, and he went about his business on Sunday and helped them in a really big spot. LaQuint Allen also with the most LaQuint Allen forced fumble of all time. Literally just catapults himself like an angry bird in the game into the Titans player and forces the fumble and recovers it. That's LaQuint Allen, man. LaQuint Allen, when they talk about intangibly rich and Jaguar DNA and all those other things, when they get down to it, when you talk about culture, when they talk about wanting to bring guys in who are themselves and will boost things around them, LaQuint Allen is every single definition of it. What a draft pick. Lastly, obviously, the defense can't go unnoticed. Another great effort. Obviously, the Titans are in a pretty bad place on offense, but they did what they were supposed to. They settled in against the run as the game went on after getting gashed early on. I was interested to see that. They've done that a few times this season. Maybe they struggle early on, and they get better as the game goes. They force a turnover. Ventrell Miller. I think Josh Hines Allen is playing great football right now. I mean, he has just been on a tear. since the bye week. Got a ton of pressure again. He's really been a big problem for J.C. Latham over these last 2 seasons. So, defense, Anthony Campanile deserves a lot of credit because I do think Cam Ward's a talented quarterback, but the defense came to play, especially in the big moments, the third downs to fourth downs. It never looked like anything was easy for the Titans. So, thank you guys for joining me for today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. We'll be back next time.